There was an inflection point. There was a point, like when I sat down at my desk and I literally, I was having a conversation with myself, like, am I doing this? Am I doing this? Because if I'm doing it, I'm all in. And so if I'm all in, I'm not just going to see what happens.
Welcome to the Smart Gets Paid podcast with me, Leah Niederthal. I help women land higher paying clients in their independent consulting businesses, but I've never been a salesperson. My background is in corporate marketing, and when I started my first consulting business, I learned pretty quickly that it's about 1,000 times harder to sell your own stuff than it is to sell someone else's. So I taught myself how to do it, and I created the sales approach that I now share with my clients so they can feel more comfortable in the sales process, get more of the right clients, and get paid way more for every client contract. So whether your client contracts are $5,000, $100,000, or more, if you want to work with more of the clients you love, do more of the work you love, and get paid more than you ever thought you could, then you're in the right place. Let's do it together. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to rate, review, and share.
Hey there, Leah here, and thanks for tuning in. I hope that wherever you're listening to this, wherever you are right now, you're having a great week, making some good progress on your business, and taking some time for you. So you might be able to hear that I have a little cold right now, just your standard sort of winter cough and cold. It's sort of that time of year, but I think I'm on the tail end of it. So yay. And actually, I have to tell you, I waited as long as I possibly could to record this episode because I was really hoping that this was going to clear up. But alas, my cold is still here and I still sound like this. So we're doing this anyway, because this episode is really just too important to put off any further. And this is such an important conversation because it really speaks to what I'm hearing a lot recently in my conversations with women consultants and really the situation that they're finding themselves in. And that is the women I'm talking to, when they started working with clients, they didn't actually go into it wanting to start a business. Like maybe they thought it would be something to do on the side to just earn a bit of money on top of their corporate income. Or maybe they thought it would be temporary, like between jobs or if they got laid off. I mean, maybe this is your situation too. Maybe you didn't go into this thinking, I'm going to start a business. You just wanted to work with some clients. And so because of that, they've spent the last few years just sort of going along in their business, but not treating it like a business. Just sort of going along, taking the work that comes their way and sort of seeing what happens. But then after a few years, they realize okay, I guess I do have a business here. One of the women I spoke to sort of put it this way. She goes, I didn't go into it wanting to start a business. And in terms of how it feels like I've been sort of living in a tent. But now it's like, oh, wait, I live here now. But the problem is it's still a tent. And it sort of affects my confidence and how I show up in the business. And so in that situation, after a time, one of two things tends to happen. They either think, I guess I need to treat it like a business, or they think, time to treat it like a business. And the second option, time to treat it like a business, is what the woman I'm talking to today decided. And it really transformed her business. So today I'm talking to Beth Messich. Beth is a leadership coach and consultant who helps companies develop an internal pipeline of capable leaders at every level, which allows the companies she works with to grow the careers of their leaders and help them move the business forward. And when I started working with Beth, she was at a similar moment to the one I described earlier. She had started doing some consulting on the side, during COVID, because she had just gotten some people reaching out to her who knew she was, good at what she did. And she just sort of started saying yes. And for a little while, she did that just to sort of see what happened. But after a few years, she decided to stop just seeing what happens and start being intentional about running her business. And that journey is what she's going to share with you here. So in my conversation with Beth, you'll hear when she decided to build her business with intention and why she decided that. You'll hear how she went from being a quote unquote utility player to being seen as a specialist and an expert. You're going to hear what she decided to focus on and also what she decided not to focus on, and how she was able to take soft skills, quote unquote soft skills, and position them as a critical must-have for her clients. And finally, you're going to hear how she got clear on her value and her pricing and how she's been able to take vacations and turn off work, which I have to tell you is a masterclass in boundaries. I'm so excited for you to hear Beth's story because I wanted you to see what happens when you start to be intentional about your business. So just as a quick heads up, when Beth and I recorded our conversation, I was sitting outside and I remember it was like this beautiful day, kind of windy. So during our conversation, you're going to hear some birds. You might hear some wind in my microphone. You're not going crazy. It's just the recording. So take a listen to my conversation with Beth Messich. And at the end, I'll come back and share a lesson that you can apply to your business. And then hopefully someday soon, you'll partner with us to help you build your consulting business and you'll come back on the podcast and share your story. Enjoy. Beth, I'm so happy to see you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have the conversation.
So Beth, let's start by, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Beth Messich. My business is Beth Messich Coaching and Consulting, and I help companies develop an internal pipeline of highly capable leaders at every level to both grow careers and deliver business results. And I do that through executive coaching that's really focused on leadership and career. And then I have a consulting side of the business that is learning and development and talent management coaching that's everything from I can create your learning strategies, build out your leadership programs, do org design, or create your entire performance management system.
I love it. I love how you describe that. That was so tight and like clear and crisp. You must have been working on this for some time.
Yes. Yeah. I've literally counted it. Those 20 words took me a year. So, so there we are.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you've ever thought to yourself, God, why is this taking so long to like come up with my messaging or, how I describe myself? 20 words in a year. That's about how long it takes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so before we dive in, I just want to tell everybody. So as I said to Beth earlier, and as you can see on the Zoom, so I'm sitting outside and, which is lovely. And the birds here, they're living their best life. And so if you hear birds in the background, they just want to say hi and, I hope you enjoy. So Beth, let's take us back about a year. What was going on in your business or in your world sort of when we at each other? Like you reached out for a reason, like what was that reason?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I was thinking about this. So just a little bit of background. So I have close to 20 years in learning and development, talent management in corporate America, in large global companies, largely in retail, hospitality, and then also in some startups. And I had gotten my coaching certification in 2020, intending to stay inside corporate, use it there. But I was like, maybe I'll do some coaching on the side. So during the pandemic, I set up an LLC, just to do some coaching on the side. And
as you do.
As one does, right? And during the pandemic, I, as we all can remember, it's sort of the Wild West. So I left a company, I was doing a job search and it was going well. And they're like, hey, we have to put this on hold. And I, out of nowhere, said to them, totally understand that. Seems like you have some work to do. Would you consider bringing me on as a consultant? And they were like, oh, yes. And I was like, cool. Let me figure out how to figure out a proposal, right?
Right.
So by the time, over the course of a couple of years, I was doing coaching, I was doing consulting, I had this LLC. I was still working internally in a corporate environment. And that wrapped up in November of 2022. And I was like, I'll start a job search in the new year, not over the holidays. I was coaching some people. Someone I used to work with reached out, had no idea what was going on with me and said, hey, is there any chance you're free for some consulting? I was like, funnily enough, I am. And I was just sort of ruminating on things throughout the holidays. And I literally sat down at my desk, the desk I'm at now, on January 2nd, 2023. And I was like, not going to start a job search. I'm actually going to start a company. And I mean, when I tell you out of the blue, like I surprised myself. And so the funny thing is, though, the last 3 years were backing me into that decision. And so I actually was making a significant amount of money in a coaching and consulting business that just sort of wasn't really fully fleshed out. And so for the first few months of that year, I was like, okay, let me figure out what a business plan is. And it was around April of 2023 where I was like, okay, I know how to do the stuff I do. I know how to coach. I know how to build learning programs. I don't know how to run a business. So maybe I'll find a business coach. And I think there's just sometimes like the universe, however you interpret the universe, is looking out for you. And at that point, you reached out to me on LinkedIn. And I will tell you, for anyone who's a consultant, the minute you tell LinkedIn you're a consultant, you get a lot of messages.
You get so much junk.
Oh my God, I can get you 30 leads in a week. And here's my ABC sales system. And I immediately delete it all. And I didn't delete your message. And I have to go back. I don't know what it said, but I was like, oh, this feels different. And so you and I just started a conversation. You suggested I listen to your podcast. So you were with me on my morning walks. I was hearing you talk. And I was really at a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And I want both coaching, I want some training, and I would love to actually talk to other people who do this and have a community. And that's kind of how this all came together for me.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for not deleting my message. And also like the range of things that I have been pitched on LinkedIn, everything from like, I can get you 30 leads to, would you like me to build an app, to just, you have a lovely smile. Would you like to go on a date with some man from some other country? Like it's
so weird,
and it's annoying, right? Yeah. But I don't know even why I must have reached out to you. I mean, it's because I didn't pitch you, right? No. I just was like, hello, I don't know.
And that was why I responded. I didn't feel like I was getting pitched. And you weren't pitching me. Like the reality was you weren't pitching me. You were looking to truly connect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, so in that moment, when you really fully committed to, learning the things or getting the help or what have you, was something not working, or you just had identified like, okay, this is a gap?
A little bit of both, right? So I'm a learning and development professional, right? Like I learn, that's my business, and I love to learn. But the thing that I also know about myself is a couple of things. I learn best when it's something that I'm interested in and can actually apply. And I learn best from a variety of sources. So there are a ton of books out there that I could read, but I needed more than a book. And so what was working, like, sure, I had proposals I had written. I had contracts that I had written. I was using LinkedIn, and I'll sort of say that in air quotes, like in the sense that I existed on there with like a hodgepodge of people that I had connected to over the last 20 years, right? But I didn't really understand strategically how to step back and think about all those components. I'm a really organized person. I'm really great with process. I didn't know enough about running a business to create my process. And so what I was really looking for was learning an application at the same time and support while I was doing that. And the biggest piece was, how do I build a client pipeline? A business pipeline. Yeah. I'm fortunate I have a great network, and any of the consulting I had gotten was through some level of like, hey, I know you, would you be available, interested in doing this? But that's not a sustainable strategy.
Right. I mean, that pipeline piece is, as you know now, such a big component to build, but it's, you can't run a business without it.
No.
But I want to talk a little bit about, because I've been having some conversations recently with women who sort of accidentally found themselves running a business.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Right. And there are good things about that, and there are difficult things about that, because in the moment when I'm talking to some of these women, I'm just thinking about some conversations more recently, they sort of cruise along, and it's like because they never quite intended to start the business.
Yeah.
They didn't quite intentionally run the business. Right. And so how did you make that shift?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there are decisions over the course of my life that I look back on where I'm like, oh, that was a smart decision. And I don't mean that to pat myself on the back. It was like, oh, luckily enough, I made a good decision there. When I would say that kind of cruising along piece was what was happening up until January 2023, where it was like, oh, I'm doing this on the side. Oh, yeah, I can do some consulting for a while to bridge this gap or whatever. But when I sat down that January, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this as a business. And I made some decisions where I said, look, people make the right decisions for themselves in their lives. There are people who are like part-time in corporate, part-time starting a business. I was like, I can't do that. I can't be part-time in a job search and part-time running a business. Like, I'm either doing this or I'm not. And so my commitment was for a year, I'm running a business. And if at the end of that year, it's not working for whatever reason, I'll go back to corporate America, right? Like I always have the opportunity to do that, but I'm not going to be half in. And I also really have this philosophy of like, if I want people to hire me for my expertise, I need to hire experts to help me with things. So when I was building a website, people were like, oh, there are tons of templates out there that you can use. Yes, there are. I am not going to do that because I'm never building a website again. And by the way, if anyone does that, great, rock on. But I was like, I'm going to hire someone who does that, who's the expert. And I did, and I'm thrilled with the result. And she's amazing. And so for me, it was really like, yeah, I kind of backed into this, but it's like one of those, those rom-coms or something where like you rewind the tape and you're like, oh, like all of those things actually led me to exactly where I was. Like, I set up an LLC without intending to really have a business. Like, come on now, right? So, come on. So I really found myself in this place where I'm like, well, it seems like everything I've been doing has been leading me here. So I'm going to do this. And I'm literally changing my mindset to now I'm an entrepreneur. And that's how I describe myself to people. Like, I am an entrepreneur. And that was a huge piece of it for me.
Oh, yeah. I can see how that would just change so many things, the next steps from there. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, so let's fast forward to now, and then let's talk about how we got to now. So bring us up to speed. What have been some of the results you've seen from making that decision and over this past year of learning? I mean, what's changed for the better?
Yeah, a lot has changed for the better. So number one, I have a business that supports my life, right? So I'm, and look, business changes, like I still have to keep my pipeline going. But the reality is I have not changed my lifestyle from when I was working full-time in a corporate job. So I still take I just came back from Thailand. Travel's really important to me. I still take vacations. I still put money into savings. I still have a great retirement fund. If anything, I actually have I have more time because I have a lot more control of my time, right? So, and in order to do that, it's because I have a business where I've got a really nice mix. So when I started, I really remember like sitting down in the beginning and being like, okay, so like, do I need 10 clients? Like, do I need 100? Like, I had no idea. I do large scale projects, which would be say 4 months to a year. I do small projects, which are 1 to 3 months. And then on coaching, I do 3-month engagements, 6-month engagements and beyond, right? And so I now have a good sense of, well, if I do 5 large projects, that's the entire year if I don't do anything else, right? If I do 2 of those or 3, right? So I think I just have a better sense of what I need to achieve my business results. And I work on building my network and developing relationships, which is a long process. Like you always say, like the sales process is 3 to 18 months. Having a really clear understanding of that and being able to understand sort of the mechanisms of here's what I need in my pipeline over time. Here's how long it takes for a sales process. How many people do I need to continue to bring in my network and really build relationships? I don't care if I add 1 million people to LinkedIn. I want to add people who are my ideal client, who I can get to know and build a relationship with. So, because the reality is they're not going to probably hire me tomorrow, but they may hire me in 9 months or 12 months or 18 months. And so really just understanding, I think one of the biggest things is understanding that whole ecosystem and philosophy is like worlds away from, so is it 10 clients or like 1,000? Like it's a very, very different place to be.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, the fact that you are where you are, having put these things in place and, built this understanding and these skills and strategies, I mean, that's fantastic. And, you're only going to go up from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's a real misunderstanding about what it takes to get a client.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And because you've hired consultants.
I have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
On the corporate side. So have I. Right.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what went on the other side of the table. And I really underestimated like what it takes And even as the client, I underestimated how my world impacts the consultant, right?
Yes.
Like, and so I don't know, when you think about like what it takes and the understanding of the ecosystem, I wish I could just like give that to everybody, right? I think that's sort of what I'm trying to do here, but like, I don't know. How do you think about that now?
I think about it as, so, I'm someone who likes to think about frameworks. And so that's sort of the framework that I think about. So the reality is I'm not going to get every proposal that I put out there is not going to get approved. Every discovery call that I make is not going to work out. Right. And I think in the beginning, it can be really scary. It can be like, oh my God, okay, someone's going to have a conversation with me and I can maybe get a project out of this. And it can be really tempting to try to like contort ourselves into whatever they need. And you can really end up in a position where you're like, I'm not doing work I want to do, or I'm not getting paid what I want to get paid. And I think I'm grateful that kind of the timing worked when it did, because I'd been running a business on the side, but when I really had to decided to make this my full-time business, I think one of the things that we talk about a lot, that you talk about a lot, really comes down to clarity, right? So things like, in the beginning, the painkiller statement, like, don't be a vitamin, be a painkiller. When you said that, I was like, oh my God, yes, right. Right? Because vitamins are great. I take them. Like, of course we all want to do the things we're supposed to do. When push comes to shove and budgets get cut, because I've worked internally in corporate, right? Like when budgets get cut and you can't do all the side projects, and you're going to hire someone to solve the thing that is causing the pain. Yes. So how do I think about the work that I do as being a painkiller and not a vitamin? And by the way, I sit in learning and development and talent management and coaching, which to a lot of people is like, oh, the fluffy side of HR, the stuff where you like hug people and make them feel good. And I'm like, no. No. All of those things are enablers of having a workforce that you can grow internally. So you're not paying to continually bring someone in because of turnover, and can actually be a huge lever for your business. And yes, let's do it in a way that's humane and make people feel great and they get robust careers. But let's make no mistake about this. This is actually a strategic decision for you to have a healthy business, and being able to position in that way has been hugely helpful for me.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think that especially when, women come from the phrase I hate the most is soft skills.
Oh my God. It's the worst.
I have a lot of, actually, okay, let's be really honest. There are a lot of phrases that like grind my gears, and this is one of them, but it's in like the top 10.
Oh yeah.
Soft skills, because I think it pre-sells any listener that this is not important. And so sometimes when I talk to women and they're like, well, how do I get somebody to buy this? This is like soft skills, or, some equivalent of that phrase. I'm like, the first sale is to yourself. So first of all, stop positioning it to yourself that this is optional.
Yes.
And then let's find the way to communicate that this is strategic.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I think what you're talking about is like not just how we communicate it to the client, right? Which is, of course, is hugely important, but also how we communicate it to ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, so between where you started and where you are, what would you say have been some of the biggest game changers for you? I mean, you mentioned, painkiller, right? But what have been some of the other things that have made the biggest difference?
Yeah, I think two other things. The first one, and this first one is sort of like a mashup of two things, but I'm going to call it one thing. The idea of ideal client and niching down. And by the way, I say this, like that stuff is out there in the world. Like figure out your ideal client, niche down, and you're like, okay, like what does that mean?
Right, like I Googled it, but what am I supposed to do with it now?
Right. I think one of the things that you talk about that I really appreciate is I think there's this idea for consultants, and I think a lot of times for women, of like, well, I don't want to say that I can't. I mean, I can do it. I can do it. Right. Like I don't.
Oh my God, you guys! I wish you had seen also this, like the gesturing and like the posture, because that is exactly how it comes out. Like it's like but I can do it. You guys can probably picture it in your heads as you hear it.
Yeah, it's almost apologetic, right? Like it's, I can do it. Like, yeah, absolutely, right? This very accommodating thing that isn't actually helpful, right? I think a lot of the times in coaching sessions and with other members of the academy, people would ask questions. I'm sure I was one of them and said like, yeah, but what if I niche down too narrow? And the reality is, and this is funny, like, we have to be able to take our own advice as well. I coach people in career transition all the time. And I always say, like, if you are not clear about what you want to do next, no company is going to figure that out for you, right? So you have to be really clear on the job that you want and then go for that. And people will be like, yeah, but what if I then don't go for another job? I'm like, do you want the other job? And they're like, no. I'm like, then don't worry about it, right? And it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
And for me, part of the way I add value is I am a utility player. I can do a lot of things, right? Like part of the way I add value inside an organization is I can build your learning program and then I can go talk to your executives and coach them and I can go blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do all the things that I can. And I think when you say to the world, I can do anything, what it comes out as, I can't really do anything well.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you said that. I read a version of that just says, I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, It just, when you say I could do everything or I could do anything, you're basically saying you are mediocre at many things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So once you sort of came to that, or you came to that in the HR space, that's part of your philosophy, but sort of in the business space, what does that say to you? What did you do next?
Well, part of it was also then figuring out the ideal client. And a lot of times, like if you read articles about ideal client, there are tips like, think about your ideal industries, think about your, ideal size companies. Not bad advice, but the reality is it's not nuanced enough. And so whenever I would do those exercises, I'd get so far and be like, whatever, right? I'd get frustrated and walk away. And I remember having a coaching conversation with you where you were pushing me and you were kind of like, but okay, yeah, those are the industries you worked at, but like, what about them? What about that organization? What about that kind of industry? And what it came down to, and this may sound a little like amorphous, but I'm like, I want to work with people who want to do the work, which kind of sounds like duh. But the reality is there are companies that will be like, yep, we need to do a learning program because we have to check the box for our people. So come on in and do a session. And, you'll look at it and be like, well, I can come in and do a session on whatever you want. Your culture is going to just negate it entirely. And it's actually not going to develop your leaders. So if that's what you're looking for, I'm not your gal. Go buy something off the shelf, right? And I obviously would say this differently to a client, a little more professionally, but I'm really clear. Like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't want to work for you because number one, it's not going to help your people. You will check a box, which is meaningless, but also then I'm not going to be able to speak to that as a success.
Right.
It won't feel like a success. So
like I can cash the check. But I'm not in it to cash checks. I'm in it to solve problems.
Yes. So I do a lot of work with retailers and hospitality and startups. One of my best clients is also a global plumbing company who wants to do the work.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a way to niche down or, find your ideal clients, you know what it is? It's not even like niching down or finding your ideal clients. It's finding the best clients for you.
Absolutely.
And the best clients for you are the clients where you can be the most successful with what you are bringing to them. And they can be the most successful with, solving the problem and finding those, what we call the markers are really, really important because not all tech companies will have the same problem, but if you really focus on the problem, you can find people who want to solve that problem in any number of industries.
Yes, for sure.
So I think sort of seeing it, turning the prism just a little bit and seeing it that way, it sounds like it really, did something for you.
Absolutely. And then the other thing is pricing and value-based pricing. Because one of the scariest things, I think, as a consultant is being like, I have to put a price on something. And I will say it does help that I worked internally and I've hired consultants. And sometimes we were hiring like the big consulting firms and the prices on those are like, holy cow. Like those are like enormous
Astronomical.
Astronomical. So this idea of like, will a company, I'm really clear that companies will pay for this stuff. So like, I sort of didn't have that hanging over me, but there is something around, value-based pricing, the idea that I am giving you a price for whatever I'm delivering that is based on, I am the person delivering it. There are other people out there who coach. There are other people out there who do the work that I do. I bring 20 plus years of experience across a variety of industries, and I deliver those things in my particular way. And that is part of the value that I deliver. And so that isn't an hourly rate. You're not hiring me to shelve books or serve coffee. And there's nothing no disrespect for that, but this isn't transactional. The value that I deliver if I train 20 of your leaders and those leaders have longer careers with your organization, that value is enormous. Every time they have a great feedback conversation because they've worked with me and don't devalue someone on their team and continue to retain people, that's part of the value. Every time a leader gets coaching and then actually is able to scale their leadership up from being a leader of people to a leader of teams, that's the value that I deliver. And that's not an hourly rate. And being able to get clear on that myself, articulate it, and then feel really comfortable putting the price on it is huge. And one of the things that I can't remember if I heard it on the podcast. I've heard you say it multiple times, so I can't remember where I first heard it, but you said something to the effect of like, you can charge whatever you want. And it wasn't like so put it as high as you can't, but like,
no, it's not about that. It's not about like guessing as how high you can go.
Yeah. And I think the other companion to that is if someone doesn't want to pay your price, that doesn't mean your price is wrong. It means it's not the right price for them in this moment for whatever reason.
Right. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong. I think that we're so, high achievers, we blame ourselves, right? Or we did something wrong. And so, if they don't say yes, it's not because you did something wrong. It's because you did something right for you and for the business. And everybody, this is what I always say, you probably heard me say this many times, right? It's my little soapbox. It's like every client has the right to go with a cheaper provider that's not as good as you. And you have the right to work with clients who can pay your prices. And you should not have to, bend over backwards or sort of twist yourself to make it work for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the other side of that is I can choose to charge less in some cases. So I do coach executives. I also really love coaching people earlier in their careers. I firmly believe if people got coaching earlier in their careers, we would have less things to fix later from a leadership perspective. And so, honestly, if someone comes to me as like a new manager who's self-pay, like their company's not paying, I give them a different price if I believe they're fully into it and feel it like that's how I balance it out. And that's my decision to make.
Absolutely. That's your decision to make. And you're making it with intention.
Absolutely.
There's something I want to touch on because coming from HR, I would love to hear your perspective on this. Because sometimes what I'll hear from, consultants, even from women in the program, when they first start to do value-based pricing, they sort of think about the price in terms of in comparison to what if it was a full-time hire? Mm-hmm. That sort of anchors their price or what have you. This is like a quarter of a full-time hire or a half, or it seems to be limiting to them. And I have 1,000 things to say, but I would love to hear how you sort of reconcile that, especially since full-time hires were your world.
Yeah. What I will say is companies have a variety of ways that they can hire people. They can hire full-time, they can hire part-time, they can hire contractors, right? And there are strategic choices that they make in all of those decisions. When you hire someone full-time, you're giving them a salary, you are giving them benefits, you are giving them perks, they have bonus. So whatever that price is, there's like an enormous, a whole other bigger price that goes along with that. So let's say, I'm making this up. Let's say if you hired this person full-time, a quarter of their salary would be $50,000. I'm just picking a number. Mm-hmm. But the reality is what they're probably actually earning is $70,000 for a quarter because they're also getting bonus and all that. So the company's paying a ton more. If you come in as a consultant and are like basing your prices only on, well, a full-time hire would be, X amount, whatever. Okay, you're not figuring in all of the other things. You are actually, if you charge the exact same amount, you're actually a savings to the company, right? So you could look at it that way. You could also say, they might be bringing me in as a consultant because they can't afford a full-time hire at the skill set that I am. So they can maybe afford to bring in someone with 3 to 5 years experience full-time. I come in with 20 years of experience. So that person, if they brought them in, their salary for that 4 months, whatever would be $50,000, my experience for the project that will go 4 months is more significant than that, right? So companies make strategic decisions. Make sure you're doing your pricing strategically, because a lot of times bringing a consultant in some way, shape, or form is actually saving the company.
Yeah. Oh, I love that perspective. And I look at it from the value positioning as well. I was definitely on a soapbox in a recent call about this because yes, they could hire somebody full time. I think the objection or the fear was that why would they pay my price when they could hire somebody full time?
They probably couldn't hire someone at your experience level full time for what you're going to charge them. Probably couldn't do it.
Right. And there are other benefits. I mean, what is the benefit to a company or a team or what have you to have somebody with a lot of experience fully focused on this?
Yes.
Not dealing with 300 other fire drills, not sitting in 8 hours of other meetings. You know what I'm saying? Like there are a lot of other things. We have to look around. We can't just look at the price.
Absolutely.
So I love that. Is there anything else that made a difference?
Yeah. One of the other things is at the start, you don't talk about the business. You don't talk about the price. You talk about what do you want your life to look like? And I think that is one of the biggest reasons. Certainly I went into consulting, and I think a lot of people do. Like, to have your own business, there's just much more control around your life. And I know consultants who are working 24/7 and, and I don't judge it. There's a whole host of things that go into that, but I'll give you an example. I was having, a couple weekends ago, I had a friend, her mom was in town. And so we were having brunch, and her mom started consulting about 4 years ago, kind of like in the PR space. And I recently went on vacation. I took a 10-day vacation to Thailand, and I don't work on vacation. I will check email once a day. I don't work on vacation. And she follows me on Instagram. So she saw the pictures and she was like, your vacation was amazing. How do you do that? How do you take a vacation and have your clients not freak out? And before I could even answer, my friend said, Beth is really good at boundaries. And I said, that's really what it is. And so what I did is I was doing a big project for a client. I was gone the first half of May. What we were delivering was really it was going to be the last 2 weeks of May to deliver into June. That was sort of a critical time period. And so when I built the project plan, I built it that everything I needed to deliver was done by the end of April. They knew what they needed to do over those 2 weeks. I told them how I'm going to be in an 11-hour time difference. So if you would like to reach out to me, I will check my email, and you can text me if it's an emergency, but no, there's going to be a time lag there. And by the way, I do learning and development. So you're going to have to define emergency for me. Stop. Someone needs to learn something. Let's just all cool down. But they knew exactly what to expect. I came back. We did the last 2 weeks. It's been launched and it's doing well. And so I don't say that from the perspective of so I've got it all figured out. Follow me to hear more great tips. I say it because I think a lot of times if we come from the perspective, and I think this is very much a corporate mindset of I am getting pulled by the tides of this company because they've hired me. And that was definitely something I had to think through. You are the owner of your business. You set the boundaries. You set the time. This is about your life. No one is going to set your boundaries but you, or set them where you want them to be. No one is going to be as focused on your life but you. So make that your responsibility to do that.
Absolutely. And I think it also goes back to something you were saying earlier, nobody's going to do it for you. Clients will not set boundaries for you, right? Clients are going to client.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you have to set your boundaries and run your business with intention. I mean, you even planned this whole project with intention because you knew it needed to be, completed and successful by this date. Yeah. Nobody's going to do it for you. And you've also heard me say a number of times, like, we teach the client how to treat us. Once you set the boundaries, if you break them, you are teaching them. I mean, this is the learning moment, right? You are teaching them that that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think what you just described is a masterclass in knowing how you want things to be for you and setting boundaries around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what would you say to somebody who's in the position that you were, back when you were sitting at your desk saying, okay, this is now a thing. I'm going to commit to this.
Yeah. I think, look, we all have to make our decisions based on the personal dynamics in our lives, our own personal financial situation. So I would say try to be as objective and clear about assessing the current state as you can. Look, I'm single. There is no second income here. I have 2 cats. They're not internet celeb cats with their own income streams. I pay for everything. So if I'm not making money, my rent doesn't get paid. So the stakes are high for me, believe me. But I decided I had this conversation with myself where I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do this scared. I'm going to do this as clear-eyed as I can. And so what that means is I'm deciding on January 2nd, I'm going to do this business full time. Well, I'm not going to be making my current income by January 5th. So what does that mean? And I got really clear on, here's the amount of my savings that I am comfortable using as I ramp up. I really need to be ramping up by mid-year. Here's what that looks like. And, look, we have to flex. We can't, there's only so much manifesting we can do. But I got really clear on all that because I think if you're not clear, and whatever, by the way, I'm not saying that's what's going to work for everyone, but once you're clear on kind of what that is, then you can more accurately assess how things are going. And the other thing I said to myself is, I'm going to spend some money. I'm not going to come at this from a scarcity, I have to pinch every penny. I am going to hire experts like the person who did my website, working with the academy, someone who's doing some systems work for me, because my time is more valuable than my dedicating my time to doing the work or building my client pipeline actually is going to be more valuable than trying to teach myself how to use a website template or read all the books on pipeline or trying to figure out how to connect to my systems, right? Whatever I'm paying anybody else is actually an investment. And so I think getting really clear on what is your current state and where are you willing to invest? Then you're making decisions from an educated standpoint and not an emotional one. Cause I had emotional moments where I was this is feeling real quiet right now. Was this a good idea? I don't need to panic because I'm having 2 quiet weeks. I'm fine. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're describing sounds just a lot of foresight and planning and all of that. And I think that some people, especially if you accidentally find yourself in a business, may not have the, the wherewithal or the, I don't know, even forethought to plan like that.
Yeah.
Are you naturally a planning person, or was this something that you how did you sit down and do this?
Yeah. I am a planner. I'm the person who's what's happening in August? Cause I got to get my weekends booked. Right. I am that person, but also there was an inflection point. There was a point, when I sat down at my desk and I literally, I was having a conversation with myself, am I doing this? Am I doing this? Because if I'm doing it, I'm all in. And so if I'm all in, I'm not just going to see what happens. When I was coaching on the side or doing some consulting, I had a full-time job. I was in a good place. I could see what happened. I could see how that evolved. If this is going to be my 100% of my income, yes, things are going to evolve, but I need to have a framework or a plan that they're evolving to so I can accurately assess, okay, did this evolve in the right direction or do I need to pull back or where do I need to put my time? A lot of it comes down to, as I talk to other as we'd have conversations even in the academy, like there are a million things you can be doing as a business owner. And sometimes it feels like you should be doing all of them at the same time. Like I should be building my network and redoing my LinkedIn page and creating an offer and blah, blah, blah. Like you can't do it all at the same time. And so if I have a sense, like being able to step back and say like, and by the way, the plan doesn't need to be beautiful. The plan was like, I've got a really pretty notebook here. Like my plan, like literally my financial plan for the first year was like, so maybe I'll try to make my salary. Like maybe that's the plan. And actually, wait, I probably am not going to have like a full year of that. So maybe I'll try to make this percentage of my salary. Like that was the plan.
Yeah. Not scientific, but
clear. But clear. And the other thing I will say about this that I did not realize is one of the most important things and biggest like skills to build as you're building your business is the practice of self-reflection, of actually like, you're not going to find your ideal client by reading something else, seeing what someone else did. So the practice of self-reflection, I think for an entrepreneur is hugely important because no one else is making those decisions. You are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It just, and I think what's implied in that is trusting yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
There's something that you said earlier. I just want to go back to. You were like, well, business changes and I still need to fill my pipeline. Yeah. And you said it almost like it was a little bit of an excuse, like I'm not perfect. I'm still, yeah. And I wanted to just touch on that because it's, one of the things we talk about is like filling your pipeline happens all the time.
Yeah.
And it never doesn't happen. And so, or, shouldn't stop. And so the pipeline always needs to be filled. I think there's something out there that of course we would wish it was like you were set for life, by posting a few posts on LinkedIn. Yeah. But if you are filling your pipeline, it's not that you did something wrong.
Absolutely not. And I think the other piece that I really didn't understand until I started honestly working with you is building my pipeline. Like I don't want to be salesy. Like I just like, it makes my shoulders come up to my ears. It feels icky. And I don't mean that selling my services is bad, but that salesy, like networking to sell, filling my pipeline is really it's really about relationship building. And relationship building doesn't happen because this is why the people who do the like, hi, I'm so-and-so from wherever, I can get you 30 leads. I'm like, you know nothing about me. The only interaction we've had is you trying to sell me something. Thank you. No, as opposed to building a network, starting to get to know that network, being helpful, reaching out if I feel like they can be helpful to me, like genuinely building. The reason the people who, my former colleagues or whomever refer me is because I've known them over time. They know me, they know how I work, they know what my work looks like. So feeling like working on the pipeline is a constant thing because you have to build relationships over time, right?
Right. Absolutely. And that's where, as a business owner, that's where you can and should be focusing.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beth, where can people find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Beth Messich. You can also go to my website, bethmessich.com, and you can reach me in either of those places.
Awesome. Beth, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's so funny. Like I think about on my morning walks, listening to your podcast. This is a real full circle moment for me. So thank you.
Totally. I'm so glad you came back to share your journey.
Yeah.
All right. I loved that conversation with Beth Messich. And if Beth said anything that spoke to you, please reach out to her on LinkedIn and let her know. So we talked about what can happen when you start to be more intentional about your business. And I think this conversation is so important right now because, listen, it's the end of the year. We're coming up on a new year. And I think the question many of us are asking is, how did I show up in my business last year? And how do I want to show up this year? And so I want to offer a way to think about this that might help you in your business. So in the Academy, when we ask this question, we ask, who were you in your business? Like if your business is a car, who were you? Where were you sitting? And there are 4 answers. I'm going to go through them here. So were you luggage? You're sort of going along for the ride. You're not taking initiative to move things forward. And you may actually be carrying baggage or adding weight that slows things down. Were you in the back seat? You were maybe doing some things, maybe kind of like a backseat driver. You have a lot of opinions about how things should be, or maybe you're sort of complaining about where you are, but you're still letting others drive. Were you the passenger? You have a vision of your destination and you're, contributing to the journey, but you're not actively steering the business. You're sort of relying on someone else, your clients maybe, to get you where you want to go. Or finally, were you the driver? You are setting the course, consistently showing up, navigating challenges, closing the gaps that are keeping you from moving forward, and taking proactive actions towards your goals. So those were the 4. Were you luggage, in the back seat, the passenger, or the driver? And this is a really helpful way to check in with yourself, And so as we roll from one year to another, it's a nice time to really, truly ask this of yourself and really be honest about which one were you in your business. Were you the luggage? Were you in the back seat? Were you the passenger? Or were you the driver? But here's the truth. This type of checking in with yourself doesn't have to happen just once a year. You can check in with yourself on this at any time. And in fact, if you're waiting for some future date, some sort of, my diet starts next month sort of thing, you could be actually making progress right now, which is why in the Academy, our members aren't just asking this question at the end of the year. We ask it at the beginning of every month. So at the beginning of every month, we get together and the members look at, what they accomplished last month, where things are in their business. And then from that, they choose the 1 or 2 strategies to work on this month. So that instead of looking at a laundry list of all the things they need to do in the program, they know the 1 or 2 things they need to work on at any time and they can focus. But part of that exercise is asking, how did you show up last month and how will you show up this month? And when you do that regularly, you can always course correct. You can always bring yourself into the driver's seat in your business. Because what I want you to take away from this is you always have the ability to be the driver in your business. And the driver is the one who decides where you're going and the one who gets you there. And that shouldn't be your clients. That shouldn't be anybody else. That should be you. And that can be you when you decide to be intentional about your business. Happy New Year.